I wasn't supposed to see it. The reel was buried deep in an old NASA archive box, one of those dust-choked cartons that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Most of it was exactly what I expected: faded mission reports, copies of grainy photographs, reels with neat handwritten labels like Apollo 11 EVA or Gemini launch tests. But one reel had no label at all. No catalog card, no reference number. Just a strip of film sealed in brittle plastic, almost as if someone wanted it forgotten. My hand shook as I fed it into the projector. The screen flickered to life, showing the lunar surface, still and silent. At first glance it was nothing more than familiar Apollo-era footage, astronauts bounding across the grey dust, horizon sharp and endless. But then something shifted in the background. A shadow, too rigid, too geometric to be a rock. The camera panned shakily, and for the briefest moment, I saw it. Half buried in regolith, a metallic structure jutted out like a jagged blade. It was angular, smooth, not shaped by any natural process. The astronauts' voices were clipped, clinical, as though rehearsed. Object at grid 97. Marking coordinates, one said, his tone calm to the point of being unnatural. Then the feed jolted violently, as though the cameraman had stumbled. I froze the frame and stared. My breath caught. The image showed dark patterns etched into the structure's surface, symbols, or circuitry, nothing I could recognize. Then the reel snapped with a harsh crack, and the screen went black. The silence that followed felt heavier than the room itself. My pulse thundered in my ears. This wasn't ordinary archival footage. I knew instantly, instinctively, that I had seen something meant to stay buried. Something not of Earth. And my life would never be the same. NASA doesn't like questions. The moment I tried digging deeper, I knew I'd crossed a line. The archive box was gone from my desk the next morning, every trace of it wiped as if it had never existed. My email stopped working, my phone flickered with static at odd hours, sometimes with faint whispers on the line that vanished the second I spoke. At first, I told myself it was paranoia, that my mind was filling the silence with ghosts. But then came the knock, 3 sharp raps that echoed like gunshots in the middle of the night. When I opened the door, a woman stood there. Mid-30s, dark hair tied back, a crisp suit that looked too official for comfort. Her eyes were calm, far too calm, as though she'd prepared for this exact moment. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said, and without waiting for an invitation, she stepped past me into the room. I froze, unable to muster a word. She introduced herself only as Myra. Her tone was professional, but her eyes never stopped scanning my walls, my books, my half-broken computer. Finally, she placed a small object on my desk. It gleamed under the light, a shard of metal no bigger than my hand. I touched it and immediately felt the wrongness, too light, impossibly smooth, edges sharp enough to cut skin without effort. "It was taken from the site you saw in the footage," Myra said. "The astronauts brought more back than they admitted. What you found was only a glimpse." She leaned closer, her voice lowering. "That structure on the moon? It wasn't abandoned. It wasn't a ruin. It was a warning." The room seemed to tilt around me. Somehow, I knew she wasn't lying. Myra drove me in silence for hours, the hum of the engine the only sound between us. We left the highway, then the paved road, until finally she guided the car through rusted gates that groaned open as if reluctant to let us in. The place looked forgotten, an abandoned airfield with cracked runways and hangars sagging under decades of neglect. Yet beneath the surface, everything was alive. A concealed elevator dropped us into a cavern of concrete and steel, a hidden vault that smelled of dust, oil, and secrets. The walls were lined with filing cabinets and shelves stacked high with reels, data drives, and even artifacts wrapped in canvas. It was like stepping into a museum of things the world was never meant to know. Myra moved with purpose, pulling open drawers until she stopped at one marked only with a single red line. Inside were reels of film, grainy photographs, and thick folders stamped with *, classified * in fading ink. She set them down and spoke quietly. "We've been finding fragments for decades. Not just on the moon. Mars. Europa. Even here on Earth. She slid a folder toward me, and inside were images, black metal walls buried in Martian rock, a rover's camera capturing impossible shadows, strange etchings carved into Antarctic ice. None of it had ever been released. Then she showed me footage even more disturbing than what I had found. Astronauts descending into caverns beneath the lunar surface, their headlamps catching walls that pulsed faintly as though alive. A rover recording a figure darting across the horizon, far too fast for any dust storm. And one chilling transmission, cut short by static, where a tall, not quite human silhouette stepped into the frame. The truth hit me like a blow. We weren't alone. We had never been. Worse, someone, or something, had always been watching. Weeks passed in a haze of secrecy before Myra finally brought me to the place she called the listening post. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a mountain scarred by antennas and weather-beaten rock. But beneath it, buried under layers of concrete and steel, was a facility alive with power. The hum of servers filled the air, banks of monitors stretched across the walls, and people moved with quiet urgency, their faces pale in the glow of screens. This was no ordinary research station, it was a nerve center, a hidden ear pressed against the cosmos. Myra guided me past rows of analysts to a chamber where a single monitor pulsed with a faint rhythm. The sound came through the speakers, a steady tone that made my bones ache. "That's it," she said softly. The same frequency encoded in the Apollo reels. The same signal found etched into Martian ruins. It's been repeating for decades. The message wasn't random noise. It carried structure, deliberate pacing, like a heartbeat or a warning bell. And then, with the cold detachment of a scientist delivering a death sentence, Myra translated the meaning. "Do not dig deeper." The words hung in the air like a curse. I stared at the screen, trying to process it. Humanity had already ignored it. We drilled into Martian caves. We sent probes into Europa's oceans. We dug where we weren't wanted. And now, Myra explained, the signal had changed. The once steady rhythm had shifted in recent weeks, evolving into something sharper, clearer. "It's no longer just a warning," she whispered. "It's become an answer." On the screen, the pulse quickened, almost like a beacon. Not telling us to stop anymore, calling us closer. Inviting us into something we didn't understand. It began with tremors on the far side of the moon. At first, scientists dismissed them as shallow quakes, common enough on a world still settling from ancient impacts. But then the readings grew stronger, rhythmic, almost mechanical. Satellites captured plumes of dust rising from craters, waves of seismic energy radiating outward as though something beneath the surface was stirring. The world space agencies scrambled to explain it, but the truth arrived in the form of light. One night, every telescope turned skyward caught the same event. A blinding flare erupted from the lunar surface, so bright it overwhelmed sensors and left streaks across cameras. When the glare finally subsided, the impossible stood revealed, a spire of black metal rising from the dust, taller than Everest, its surface flowing with patterns of shifting light. It was as though the moon itself had grown a tower overnight. Governments reacted instantly. NASA issued vague statements about unusual geological activity. SpaceX announced an emergency mission. Militaries mobilized, their fleets redirecting toward lunar orbit. Yet none of them moved fast enough. The spire wasn't just standing still, it was responding. Panels unfolded from its surface like wings unfurling after a long slumber. Energy rippled outward in waves strong enough to disrupt satellites and scramble radio traffic across Earth. I watched from the listening post, heart hammering as the room descended into chaos. Then, for the first time, the spire spoke. Not in alien tones, not in indecipherable frequencies, but in a voice every human could understand. Radios across the planet crackled alive, from military bands to old transistor sets in forgotten attics. "You were not invited," the voice said, calm and final. And just like that, humanity understood we had woken something that had never wanted to be found. The world fractured overnight. Some called for war, demanding that the spire be destroyed before it could threaten Earth. Others fell to their knees, convinced it was divine, a message from the heavens. News channels blared conflicting voices while governments bickered behind closed doors. The spire loomed above it all, silent now, but watching. It didn't need to move, its very presence was enough to split humanity against itself. At the listening post, Myra's composure finally cracked. Her calm eyes hardened into steel. "This isn't just discovery," she told me. "This is judgment. And if we let the politicians handle it, they'll doom us all." That was when she revealed the plan. A shuttle, small, unmarked, hidden in the post's underground hangar, waiting for a crew reckless enough to try contact. We weren't soldiers, not even explorers. But we were desperate, and maybe that was what humanity needed most. The launch was silent, hidden from the world. As we ascended, Earth fell away beneath us, and the moon swelled larger in the viewport. The spire's surface shimmered with flowing patterns, alive with a rhythm that matched the pulse I'd once heard in the listening post. The closer we drew, the stronger it became, not in sound but in sensation. Our bones thrummed, our teeth ached, as though the monument was singing directly into us. When we touched down on the lunar surface, the dust settled in ghostly clouds around the shuttle. The spire loomed above, vast and indifferent, its base stretching into the crater walls. Then, without warning, a section of its surface folded open, revealing a passage dark and waiting. Myra's whisper carried in the silence of our helmets. "It's not dead technology. It's not a ruin. It's a door." And it had just invited us in. I stepped forward first, my boots crunching against the grey dust, the lunar horizon swallowed by the spire's immense shadow. The surface felt alive beneath my hand, rippling slightly, liquid and solid at the same time, as if the monument itself was aware of our presence. Light spilled from the opening, warm and unnatural, washing over the crater like an otherworldly tide. My pulse raced, but curiosity pushed me onward. Myra followed close behind, silent, her eyes wide with the same mix of awe and fear I felt. Inside, the spire's interior defied comprehension. The walls pulsed with flowing patterns of light, moving like rivers of energy. Gravity shifted subtly, tugging and releasing, disorienting us in the strange space. I caught glimpses of shapes that should not exist, corridors that seemed infinite, halls that bent and twisted, leading to impossible perspectives. I could hear whispers in my mind, not words but impressions, history, warning, judgment. Then I saw it, beyond a shimmering archway lay stars unlike any I had seen. They weren't distant suns, but networks of light, bridges connecting planets and civilizations. I saw worlds scarred by fire, empires extinguished like candles, all mapped across the cosmic expanse. And in the center, an entity, or perhaps a construct, watched everything with an intelligence older than the sun itself. The realization hit me with terrifying clarity. Humanity was not the first experiment. We were the latest. The spire was a checkpoint, a sentinel, a test we had unknowingly entered. And now, by uncovering it, we were part of something far larger, far older, and infinitely more dangerous than anything we could have imagined. A voice spoke then, resonant, calm, almost human, echoing through the light and into my mind, "Welcome. The trial begins." I felt the weight of that single sentence crushing and exhilarating all at once. Our choices, our survival, our very future, everything hung in balance. Humanity had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back. The game had begun, and the universe was already watching.